Hi, hello, welcome to the video. I've been wanting to put out my thoughts on the very young NBA season thus far, but I haven't been working on the next podcast episode a whole lot because I've been trying to make myself finish the Eastern Conference thing that I was trying to do, in tandem with the West that I'd finished before the season. So yeah, I think I'm cutting that. I'm not going to do the Eastern Conference predictions now that we're like over a week into the season. I will address or I'll bring up my preseason thoughts on teams when I feel like it's necessary or important. Like already I kind of want to do with the Sixers and maybe a couple other teams, but yeah, I don't need to do a whole thing into it when you already have the last video I posted, or one of the last ones, of me, going through what my predictions are, comparing them to gambling odds, and you have the whole West that I did before the season in 3 different episodes. So yeah, the next podcast episode I don't think will be that. And I'm not going to tell you what I'm thinking about doing for it, because whatever I say in a video or on a thing ends up changing, and I don't want to do that anymore, or I just change my mind, and then people are expecting me to do what I say, but I never do. Great stand-up individual, probably a really admirable character trait to possess. But yeah, the rant or the thing that I wanted to go off on in this video here is really just about something that I feel like I've heard from a lot of people, whether it be on podcasts or even in person, talking to people, socializing, talking about the NBA in real life. And so, naturally the Lakers kind of come up because that's like one of the biggest brands in all of sports. And I know I've talked about this already quite a bit on the last couple of podcast episodes, but yeah, I still have more thoughts with the Lakers for some reason. I wish I didn't talk about the Lakers so much, but I am again. And that's mainly because I feel like lately I've been fascinated with the bridge between casual fandom, or like people who don't really pay attention to the NBA, and the NBA itself. So like the perception that they have of the league versus what's actually going on. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I feel like Russell Westbrook and the Lakers situation is a big thing that comes up a lot in regards to that, because for the general, fan on Instagram, casual fan of the NBA, seeing all this stuff about how Russ is playing really bad, a lot of people probably had him as their favorite player for a while, and they're like, what's going on with Russell Westbrook? And people just have to try to come to a conclusion on why he's bad now. They're like, Russ Westbrook I thought was good, so how can he be bad? And they just try to boil it down to, Russ can't play in this league anymore, or like Russ is bad at basketball because the league has developed past him. Like he can't shoot the ball, this, that, and the other thing, and you need that in the NBA to be successful, so that's why he's bad, which just really isn't true. There's plenty of players that can get by without being a good three-point shooter, especially in the role that Russ is used to playing normally previously in his career, being a guy who's a primary ball handler, getting to the rim. LeBron for most of his career has been that. But I guess focusing on players right now today, how about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? He's a better shooter than Russ. He doesn't shoot a lot of shots from the outside. He drives just about every. Jimmy Butler, great example. Jimmy Butler is a great player. Not a three-point shooter, even in the slightest. There are examples of those kinds of players. Draymond Green, another one, that are still like rotation level or even star level players right now that they can't shoot well at all, but they're still useful. The thing is that it seems like people don't understand, or at least they don't attribute this situation that's going on here to this thing, and that is that fit matters. I'm not sure why it takes people so long to arrive at that being a variable, Not sure why people try to diagnose things before they get to the fit part of the discussion, because fit matters a lot. This is just what I feel like is a very, very good example of how fit is very important. People knew from day one, everyone who paid a good amount of attention to the NBA in recent years knew that the Lakers did not make any sense as a roster coming together, and there were question marks with it. Sure, there was a lot of people still thinking, oh, well, they'll figure it out because there's, they're 3 really good players, and it's LeBron, he always has success, so it's just going to work. And also, I think it was just the factor of, LeBron's always described as this person who knows so much about basketball and is so gifted with just his mind about basketball, which I'm not saying isn't true, but I don't know if he really is that in the same way that other people are. I think his might be in a very specific way to actually playing basketball, because LeBron as GM over the years hasn't been that crazy of thinking levels ahead or making the best decisions, it seems. And the fact that he really wanted this Russ trade to happen just makes me really question about the roster construction part of LeBron's basketball IQ, how good that actually is. Because what was the idea? I don't understand. There was one argument that that was going around about, oh, Russ is just like the safety for LeBron and AD needing a lot of rest and maybe being out with injury during the season. Russ can be that workhorse that just carries them to the postseason, and carries that load offensively and whatever. Just is that, engine of the team while those guys are out. And it's like, okay, but what is he going to do when all of them are healthy? When you have a full team? When you're trying to win a championship, and all that stuff? What is he going to do? And beyond that, if you do just have Russell Westbrook on this team without LeBron and AD, it's a really bad team. It's not just the fact that you have those three guys together and it's showing the limitations of what those three can do together. We're pretty far down on the list of outcomes that could, happen with having these three guys together, because on top of just having those three guys, they've also built around them very poorly. Rob Pelinka, I literally am starting to think is just the worst GM in basketball. How does he not sign? There's just people who end up other places in the league. And it's I thought the Lakers have this magical sway over everybody because of the market that they're in and the city that they're in. And they can just get free agents that other people can't. But where are those people are going every other place? Why do the Clippers have 12 guys on their roster that is the only type of player that I guarantee you need to have surround these three players that you have with in order to be successful? Just 3-and-D wings. 3-and-D players in general. Just get those. Get ones that can actually play. Ones that are okay. Why do the Clippers have all of them? I'm not a Lakers fan, just by the way. It's just poor roster construction decisions get me worked up because I don't understand what other people are talking about sometimes, or why they decide to do the things they do, and why they're paid millions of dollars to do this, to put teams together. And Rob Pelinka just got extended another 4 or 5 years, something like that. What has he done? What has Rob Pelinka done? He got LeBron there? Not really. Magic Johnson, probably more of the person who's recruited him. And really, did you need somebody there to recruit LeBron to LA, or do you think that just would have happened on its own? Later in his career, that's where he wants to end his career, because that's where he wants to live after he's done playing. That's where he's starting to put down roots for his new home, is in LA. That's the reason he went there. Okay? Are you going to give Rob Pelinka credit for the AD trade? Because I don't think he should get any credit for the AD trade. What credit should he get? AD, for those that don't remember, he forced his way out of New Orleans by saying that he wasn't going to play anymore. He just stopped playing. Okay? He was deactivated. Anthony Davis has the same agent as LeBron James, Rich Paul, Clutch Sports. Rich Paul is a childhood best friend of LeBron James and his sports agent. That's how Rich Paul got started in sports agency, and now he's the most powerful sports agent in basketball. So that was the connection there. And obviously LeBron and AD know each other from USA Basketball and stuff like that. They're probably pretty tight. And at least in this scenario, I think LeBron, was very smart with the teammate that he was trying to recruit to get him to his team, because stylistically, LeBron and AD fit super well together. Outside of the fact that neither of them are great floor spacers, but that's really the only downside. It's LeBron, great ball handler. Anthony Davis, one of the best off-ball superstars in the NBA, and pairs super well with a person who's a ball handler and initiator to an offense. And he's a Swiss Army knife, rim protector, switch all over the floor type of defender that can cover up for LeBron, taking it easy on the defensive end in his later years, picking and choosing his spots. That's just a great fit. It's a great match. And Anthony Davis specifically said that he wanted to go to Los Angeles, and he only had 1 year left on his deal. So he's I want to be traded from New Orleans. I don't want to play here anymore. I want to go to Los Angeles. I want to go to the Lakers. Okay. So what that does is gives the Lakers all of the leverage that you could possibly have, because teams that were wanting to get AD before, he said where he wanted to go specifically, like the Celtics, and I'm sure a few other teams. I just remember the Celtics specifically because Anthony Davis's dad actually came out with a quote saying that if he gets traded to the Celtics, that Anthony Davis is not going to re-sign there. So they would only have him for 1 season, is what that means. So why would any teams give up anything valuable to get Anthony Davis just for a season, and possibly not even a full, what if he doesn't even play once he gets there because he doesn't want to be there? So those teams aren't going to trade for him. The Lakers are the one team that have leverage to get Anthony Davis, because that's where he wants to go. That's where he's going to stay. Presumably, that's what he says. Okay. So it shouldn't be that hard to pry Anthony Davis away from New Orleans then. You shouldn't have to give up that much. So what did they end up giving up? Just their entire future of the most draft picks that you possibly can, on top of their 2 of their 3, I should say, best young assets that they currently had in Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram, who the 2, actually, yeah, that's their top 2. I mean, they had 3. It was a list of 3 that they always talked about before. Lonzo, Lonzo, Kyle Kuzma, and Brandon Ingram, but Lonzo and Brandon Ingram are the top 2 out of those 3, for sure. Those are the ones they gave up. And they gave up Josh Hart, a nice young role player at the time, and who's still a good role player in the NBA. So they give up like half their rotation players on top of all of the draft picks that they can, is what they give up for Anthony Davis. In a situation like, yeah, it worked out for sure, because that's just a great pairing. And then they still had KCP and Kyle Kuzma. Rondo was on that team. Avery Bradley, I don't think he played in the postseason, but he was on that team in the regular season. He started at point guard. Markieff Morris, Danny Green was on that team. Okay, so lots of 3-point shooting defenders. Rondo wasn't, he's not a great 3-point shooter, but he is in the playoffs for some reason. So yeah, all of those players fit that archetype. Now they don't have any of those. Austin Reeves is the closest thing to that they have. And he was an undrafted player. I don't know if he would play on, I tend to like Austin Reeves, but I'm not sure if he just looks good and looks like he works out there, because he fills such a massive void that team has, I don't know if him in like most other teams would actually look as good or play as well, because he's probably very replaceable. You see what I'm saying? There's lots of players in the league that can do what he does, and probably even better. But the Lakers don't have them, so they use Austin Reeves. But yeah, Russell Westbrook. I don't remember exactly where I am in this whole discussion, but Rob Pelinka, I think was the last thing I said. Rob Pelinka is not a good GM. So a point that I was trying to get to before, I don't know if I've veered too far off the rails for it at this point, but just talking about people convincing themselves that Russell Westbrook would work with the Lakers. Alex Caruso. I was listing players off earlier that played for the Lakers in that championship year. Alex Caruso, another very important one. But so they lost Alex Caruso in the offseason coming into this past year, and they traded KCP and Kyle Kuzma in order to get Russell Westbrook. So that was the last remaining players that they had on their team that fit the description that you want on the team to win basketball games, to surround your core with. Some people were making the argument of, you can just use Russell Westbrook like you did with Dennis Schroeder or Rondo or Alex Caruso. You don't think Russell Westbrook can do a better job at being a point guard facilitating an offense as those guys? Like that was a genuine argument people were making about this Russell Westbrook trade working. And even at the time, I think this was probably even in a podcast that I mentioned. I actually even remember having this argument with Jacob, but it was like, Russell Westbrook is a more talented player than those guys. Sure, yeah, I'm willing to admit that, but he does not even do the same things at all. I mean, Dennis Schroeder is a floor spacer. Alex Caruso can shoot a bit. Rondo, he can shoot better now than he used to be able to, but Rondo is a very, very good, smart, steady, plays at his own pace, just like a game manager, good distributor, facilitator of the offense, all that kind of stuff. I would not use any of those words to describe Russell Westbrook in the slightest. Russell Westbrook, his entire career has been just nonstop move, like he has to go. He doesn't take any time making decisions. Even when he was in OKC with KD, a lot of those years late in the playoffs, the reason their season came to an end a lot of times was the decisions that Russell Westbrook would make down the stretch of games, because he was just more of like an impulsive type of playmaker and decision maker in playing basketball, okay? Which is fine. You just have to build a system, or you just have to make that work in the context of your team. You have to account for things like that. You have to try to build to players' strengths. You can't just take Russell Westbrook and make him Rondo. They're not even close to the same type of player. Can they both pass well? Yes. They're talented at moving the ball from their hands into other people's hands. That has nothing to do with the decision making in terms of who gets the ball in their hands at what time, when, and how open those passes are, any of those things. Russell Westbrook also heavily leans upon his athleticism, the pressure that he puts on the rim in order to be a good playmaker, okay? Rondo is a playmaker. He makes plays happen. He creates those opportunities out of thin air. He's able to initiate offense, put the ball where it's supposed to be, get the ball to people that need it in places that are favorable without even needing to have that scoring threat on top of it. That's his specific skill. He's a high IQ ball handler and initiator of an offense. Russell Westbrook goes to the basket really fast. And if you don't want him to dunk on you every play, a lot of times it will require help. The defense has to collapse to meet him at the rim. And that leaves people open shooters. And then so Russell Westbrook takes off towards the rim, and if he doesn't have an opening, he swings it out to a shooter in the corner, or something like that. He's good at making those passes. But those are very simple passes to make, just in terms of that guy's open, I'm passing it to that guy. There's not a lot of people in my way. You still have to be good at having the body control, I guess, to make plays like that. I'm not saying there's no skill required for what Russell Westbrook does. I'm just saying it's not even close to the same type of skill that Rondo utilizes to do what he does. And on top of that, like Rondo and other players without the ball in their hands are going to still serve the play in a way. They're going to cut off ball, to give the offense more opportunities, especially with LeBron maybe holding it like at the elbow or the top of the key. Just continue to move, get around, try to get open, make things happen. Russell Westbrook has never been that. He's always had the ball in his hands, and when he doesn't have the ball, he's leaving the play. Like he's already kind of going back to the other side of the court. But like that's not exclusive to Russell Westbrook though. Like that's not only with him. That's with any player really for the most part. That's a super heliocentric player that like the team revolves around them. The offense revolves around them. They have the ball in their hands all the time. Like Luka Doncic, like James Harden in the past, Trae Young past few seasons, or even LeBron, his own teammate. So that's not great to have two of those guys on the team. Two guys that when they're off ball don't serve the offense a lot. I mean, LeBron definitely does it more than Russell Westbrook does, or, had in the past. Obviously, Russ has started to do at least a minimal amount of that because that's the thing he has to do in order to fit in. Because he can't just stand behind the 3-point line because he doesn't have a threat to shoot. He's not a floor spacer. But he has to be willing to move to get open and maybe at least attack closeouts off of that. Or, like I said, cut. Or the biggest thing is become a screener, an off-ball screener, on-ball screener. Like just become useful to the offense when you don't have the ball in your hands, because you're not useful when you just stand there because you can't shoot. I didn't know that Russell Westbrook would be still that bad at those things at this point. I would probably thought like, if he's playing with LeBron and AD, how could he not decide to start doing those things? But yeah, it's been really bad. But like what I'm saying is that was also a big question mark of like Russ Westbrook is not that kind of player. He's never showed us to be that kind of player. So how is this all going to work? And spoiler alert, it didn't work like at all. And it's still not working. They're 0-4, maybe 0-5 at this point. I don't remember. And now Russell Westbrook's not even playing. Like he didn't play in the Nuggets game because of injury. So now I heard people saying like, oh, we don't even have Russ to blame this game. And then so does that challenge what I just went through about how Russ is the problem? Russ, I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying. Russ isn't the only problem. Russ is a big problem in the fact that he doesn't fit with this team. But what's might be even a bigger problem is this team sucks. Like people outside of Russ and LeBron and AD are not rotation level players. Very many of them. Patrick Beverley is kind of. I think Patrick Beverley has been for a while been a little bit overrated in terms of what he does on the court. Like I don't know if he's really a super high quality starting point guard in the NBA, and that's their fourth best player. If you're putting Russ at third, which I still am. That's kind of what this video is about, the fit thing. Like there's a lot of people saying that this makes Russ bad and like this, that, the other thing. I don't think Russ is bad at basketball. It really depends on what you mean by bad, because he's very, very static. There's no wiggle room with him, and he doesn't fit along other people well. You need to put pieces around him that fit around him, which there's a plenty of in the league, by the way, just 3-and-D players, but they don't have those on the Lakers still. I went through the rosters earlier when I talked about them in the podcast. Like everyone knows at this point that in the offseason, how do we make this thing work? Just find as many 3-and-D guys as you can. Who'd they bring in? Lonnie Walker the fourth, Troy Brown Jr. Who else? One other player. Juan Toscano Anderson. You see how underwhelming that is? None of them can shoot very well. And JTA is probably, he's a good defender. Troy Brown Jr. was probably fine defensively. Lonnie Walker the fourth, I don't know. Does like dimensionally, yeah, sure, maybe. But like, who are these? Why are you bringing them in? Like, how is that the best that you can get in? How is that the best that you can bring into the team when you're the Lakers? And this is the other thing. People that I keep hearing kind of dismissing the Miles Turner and Buddy Hield trade thing. And for those of you who've listened to my podcast recently, you heard me go off on how much that would be good for the Lakers, which I still think it is. And but I don't understand why other people are talking about it as if it's not going to be a big deal, or it's not going to be a big difference maker for the Lakers. At least in the sense of like, I just heard people recently say like it's absurd to think that the Lakers would become a conference finals contender even if they made that trade. And I just disagree. Buddy Hield and Miles Turner does so much for this team. Just bringing them in and swapping them out for Russ, just in the here and now. I'm not saying it makes them the title favorite, but it definitely makes them like at least close to a contender if LeBron and AD stay healthy. I mean, we've already seen from AD this season that he is at least somewhat back into form defensively so far to where he was close to his prime. You know, like he's looked good defensively. He's looked like himself defensively. LeBron has looked good. Like, if you just bring in Buddy Hield, who can shoot the lights out, you don't really even need him to play all that much defense when you have Miles Turner and Anthony freaking Davis as your bigs, as your front court. That's the best defensive front court in all of basketball, which I think right now is currently held by Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. But that would probably even surpass it for this season. And on top of that, both those guys can shoot. Well, okay, Anthony Davis hasn't been shooting well the past couple of years now in his career, but Miles Turner is a floor spacer, one of the better three-point shooting big men in the league. Why? How could that not be a good trade? How would that not be a great trade, actually, just in terms of what it does for you this season? I'm kind of separating this discussion from the discussion about whether you should trade your only 2 draft picks that you have available to you for that. I understand that discussion. But in terms of literally just Russ for Buddy Hield and Miles Turner, which is all that's really happening as far as this season is concerned in this hypothetical deal, that turns the Lakers to an entirely different team overnight. It really does. Like, that's the purpose of this video. Newsflash. Fit matters. That fits super well. It just does. It fits well. Fits great. I don't really know what else I'm going to talk about in this video. I don't think I need to talk about anything else. Just thought I'd let you know. Fit matters.